Right here in the middle for Matt.
Yes, sir. My name is Jim. Matt, you and I go back a long ways. You may not remember, but 1980, 85, 89.
At Harvester.
We were members at Harvester Baptist Church. We were so proud of you. You were one of our bright stars. You were a bright young man. You were a leader in our youth group. And I stand here today and I want to just ask one question. What was it that triggered in your life the change? Because if I'd have bet in 1987 when you graduated from Francis Howe, you'd have been a star. And I just want to know, for my own edification and for us, what was the trigger?
And thanks, Jim. By the way, when I mentioned that there were people here, so I grew up in the St. Charles area, went to First Baptist Church of Harvester. There are at least 3 people here from that church. So it's nice because not only am I in a Baptist church, but a lot of times when I say, oh, I was a Baptist, people are like, oh, I don't believe that. Well, they'll vouch for it. Thanks so much for the kind words, Jim. It wasn't one thing. There wasn't anything bad that happened. I felt when I was in our youth group, as did many of the kids in our youth group, that God wanted me to be a pastor. Some of my other friends felt a similar calling. It worked out to varying degrees depending, on who you're talking about. I didn't want to do that. I was terrified of public speaking, which is incredibly ironic now. And I had a girlfriend. I wanted to get married. I decided I was going to go join the Navy. And I did that for a little over 8 years. I got out of the Navy. I moved to Austin. I worked for Dell. I was focused primarily on my career and building a life. And around 2000, 2001, I lost my job that I had worked really hard at and should have been promoted instead of losing that job. And at the time, I said, oh, wow, this is God punishing me for running away from a calling to ministry. And so I said, okay, I give up. If that's what you want me to do, I'll do it. And I spent a little over 18 months or so in pretty serious prayer and study. And I went to my uncle, who was a medical missionary, and I went to a number of pastor friends of mine. And at the time, my roommate was an atheist. We'd never had any conversations about this. It's just the way it was. I believed, he didn't. We didn't talk about it because, hey, we're best friends. Why would we screw that up, by me preaching and stuff? But when I decided that I was going to actually get serious about 1 Peter 3:15 and do what I thought I was being led to do, I did not want to get to heaven and have God say, why is this guy who you love like a brother burning in hell when you could have shared the gospel? And so I set out to find the best way to engage with somebody. Now, the weird thing is that growing up, Monday nights were visitation, and you go out to anybody, fill out the cards. In my head, there was a definition of atheist that was Madeline Murray O'Hare, who I wasn't allowed to watch or listen to on TV. But then there were non-believers. They weren't atheists. Yes, they were. At the time, this is how I looked at it. These people they're just unsaved. They need Christ. So I had actually engaged with atheists without ever knowing it because my picture in my head was different. But I set out to figure out how to engage in the conversations with an atheist. And to make the long story short, this time of prayer and study backfired spectacularly. I wanted to be the best Christian that God wanted me to be, and evidently the best Christian he wanted me to be was an atheist, is how I joke about it. But the truth is, I spent a long time on my knees and frustrated and getting no answer. But I still didn't give it up for that. The reason I don't believe is because I discovered fallacies in the reasons for belief, a lack of evidence, an inability to demonstrate the truth of the proposition. It's demonstrated here. Mike is convinced that, hey, if our current understanding of what's possible doesn't account for something, we can conclude that it's supernatural. I can't buy that. I want to know what the explanation is, not how I'm going to label it as not natural. I joke that this was going to take multiple lifetimes, so I investigated Buddhism next to see if I would have multiple lifetimes to explore it. But what ended up happening is I delved into, I'm not making the long story short, sorry. I got more into philosophy specifically to find out what kind of God might exist in order to direct my search towards the truth. And through that process and an understanding of critical thinking, logical reasoning, fallacies, the nature of evidence, and what we can and can't demonstrate, I found that I was unable, as was anyone else I was able to talk to demonstrate a good reason for belief. And by the way, I know that this will make many of you, probably including you, Jim, and I'm sorry, sad. I know it makes my parents sad. You guys aren't the enemy. I don't hate you. You're not stupid. My IQ didn't go up when I stopped believing. I don't accept what you do, and I think I have good reasons for it. And when I try to get good reasons from believers, they seem to fail, which I think explains why there's so much disagreement, even within just Christianity, let alone other world religions. I know that it makes people sad, which breaks my heart because from my perspective, it's extra sad that you're sad about someone essentially being liberated and free to explore and free to change their mind. And my search continues. Do I think that it's likely that I'm going to find it? No, because for thousands of years, we've had the same arguments over and over and over and over again. And I understand that it's frustrating, and I understand for you and others in particular, it's incredibly disheartening. And I didn't mean to give a sermon about all this. But belief is not a choice. What you accept to be true is the result of what you are convinced of. And you can become convinced for good reasons or bad reasons. I want to become convinced for good reasons. I haven't seen good reasons to believe Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, definitely not Scientology, blah, blah, blah.